Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2020 Subaru WRX, we're going to be showing you how to install the Curt custom fit vehicle wiring harness. But before we do that, let's take a minute, check it out, and make sure it's going to work for you. So with the WRX, it's definitely not the first vehicle that comes to mind when you think of pulling trailers around and whatnot, but people definitely do it. And perfect example today, our neighbor set up the hitch, got a ball mount, and is going to tug around a small trailer. And so if that's what you plan on doing, you're going to need wiring. That way all the lights on your trailer will work and you'll stay safe and legal. And with the setup like this, we actually have it stored on the inside of a vehicle, which I kind of like on a car like this especially. When you're ready to use it, it's just going to live underneath this floor covering here. And you can route this to the outside if you want, mount up next to the hitch, which we'll talk about that in a little bit during the install. But the way this will work is it's going to drop over your threshold here, and anywhere is fine, you know, just avoid the latch mechanism, of course. And more than enough length there, got a long bit of wire, and you're actually going to close the hatch on it. And it might seem kind of odd doing that, but that's where you're not going to hurt the wiring or your vehicle for that matter. And that's going to give us that connection point that we need now to plug into our trailer. So this is going to be a 4-way flat style of connector, which is super common on those, you know, smaller and medium-sized trailers that the Subaru is going to be likely to pull here. And we'll get all of our basic functions. So we'll get our tail lights, our turn signals, and our brake lights. This wiring kit is also going to be compatible with the STI models, so if you have one of those, it will work. And one of the nice things, it is plug and play. So how it's going to work, it's going to have some connectors that essentially are just going to tee into the back of your tail lights. So you unplug them, plug the connector in, and then plug your factory wiring right back into that. So you don't have to you don't really have to chop into anything or splice or anything along those lines. Which definitely helps with the installation. Install's a little time consuming really because you're just going to have to run a power wire from the back up to the battery, and that's how it's going to receive all the power and whatnot. I routed mine underneath the vehicle. Some people don't like the thought of that, and it's perfectly fine if you'd rather run it on the inside of your vehicle and go through the firewall. You can definitely do that as well. But if you want to see how we did it, hang around, we'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the back of our Subaru, and we're going to be working in the trunk area, so go ahead and pop that. And first things first, we can remove any of the floor coverings that are inside. So these will just pull right out. We'll get them out of our way. And I'm also going to pull out just all these foam pieces as well. We're able to remove this threshold now, so the scuff liner piece, and there's 3 push pin style fasteners just like this one here. So you have one in the middle and then one on each side. And so you can take a flathead screwdriver and pry underneath the head of it and work that whole base out. And I have the other ones removed already. So to actually get this out, you should be able to just kind of pull up on it and unsnap it from the vehicle, and we'll set it to the side for now. We're going to need to peel back these liners here behind the taillights. So we're going to have 3 fasteners. One of them will be this here. And with this one, you simply just unthread it. The other 2 are going to be push pins, very similar to the one that we removed from our scuff liner or threshold. So we have this one here. Essentially, if you just follow that up, there will be one right there as well. Get that pulled out. we should be able to now take this carpeting and peel that back out of the way. And in our case, our vehicle has a brake light down there by the bottom of our fascia, so that's what all this is. It just kind of taps in. But either way, we're going to have to unplug the wiring where it goes into our taillight, and so I'm going to do it right here where the factory connector plug actually is. So just push down on the tab, separate it, and then I'm going to do the same exact thing over on the passenger side. We can grab our trailer wiring now, and we're going to be working with the end that is red, yellow, brown, and white, and we're over here on the driver's side, and it's just going to tee into our factory wiring. So one end will plug in there, the other end will plug in right there. The other T connector end that has the green and white wires, you're just going to run that over to the passenger side, and that's going to plug in the same exact way. Now we can secure our converter box, and I'm going to use the sticky tape that they give you. So make sure wherever you put this, make sure the surface is clean and dry so you can wipe it down with rubbing alcohol. Let it dry. I'll put this on. I'm going to find a good spot for this and get it secured and show you where it ended up. Here's what I come up with here. There was a good flat spot on this piece of sheet metal. So I used the sticky tape, and I also used the big zip tie, kind of ran it through there as well, just for a little extra security. We're able to take the white wire now that has the pre-attached ring terminal on it. That's going to be a ground, and I'm just going to use this stud here that's holding our tail light on. That should be sufficient. So I'll remove the nut with an 8mm and put the ring terminal over it and reinstall the nut. Now we can grab the big bundle of power wire, and one end you can strip the insulation back a little bit. Give the wire a twist to make sure that it's nice and tight. You can grab one of the butt connectors that's going to slide over the bare end of the wire. And we'll crimp it down, and this is how we're going to make all of our electrical connections, whether it be a butt connector or a ring terminal. Take the other end of the butt connector. The black wire coming off of the box there, that's already pre-stripped. This is going to get pushed in there, and we'll crimp it down. So I went ahead and just kind of started to clean everything up. Just use some zip ties to kind of bundle up all of our loose ends and keep everything secure and tidy. The butt connector that we just did, I wrapped in electrical tape for an extra layer of protection. And where that power wire is going to run, that's going to have to get connected to the battery. And so I started to follow this factory wiring here towards the front of our vehicle. So here's where the power wire is going to essentially start to run towards the middle of the car. And there's this plastic piece here. I just popped it free so we could see better. There's just a few pushpin fasteners holding it in. But since we need to get access to the underside of our vehicle, here's a grommet here that we can utilize. And I'm just going to cut a really small opening in it. When you do this, make sure you're not going to damage, the factory wires that are already there. But this one's pretty wide open. We should be in good shape. Then I'm just going to take our power wire and feed it completely through. I got our wire pushed all the way through, zip tied it up here at the base, and it's not a bad idea to take some silicone and just put it around that. That way it keeps everything sealed up. But what we can do now, not going to go underneath the car just yet. We're going to do something underneath the hood to make it a little bit easier to actually route our wire. What I did underneath the hood here on the driver's side is used a fish wire. So this is just a piece of tubing I had laying around, You can use a thick piece of wire, a metal coat hanger if you straighten it out, something along those lines. And I just dropped it down from the top down to the bottom side of our vehicle. That way when we get our power wire up here, we can connect it to our fish wire and be able to pull it right up into position. I will say there's not a ton of room here, so keep in mind, you know, when you do this, to avoid any hotter moving parts. So our steering shaft is right there. The exhaust is somewhat in the area, so something to think about whenever you're routing wiring in general. Underneath the vehicle now, our wiring is going to come down right here in this area through that grommet. You know, it's a little tricky to see, there's just so much stuff going on, but after taking a look at everything underneath the vehicle, figured it was the right move would be to actually route it along the passenger side. There's just less stuff there, and we have the length to do it, so that's what I did. So I shot our wire across towards the passenger side, kind of see where it drops down here. And then along this panel, I just drilled a few small holes to zip tie it up. And it's just gonna run along through here. And this panel too, there's a couple little plastic fasteners in there. I popped them out so we could see better. But I did the same thing every now and again, drilled a small hole, ran it along like that, and I'll come back and re-secure this once we're done here. It just runs along through the front, through this opening, and like I said, since we changed sides, I actually didn't even need to use the pull wire because it's really wide open over here, so I just pushed our wiring up into the engine compartment. Underneath the hood, this is where our wiring comes up into the engine compartment, and I just started to route it along some of our factory wiring there over to the driver's side, where I have it dropping down and coming up by the battery. And at that point, I cut it to length, and the kit's going to come with this fuse holder. So one end of the fuse holder, I crimped on a ring terminal. The other end, I crimped on a butt connector, and I opted to upgrade to a heat shrink style butt connector since this is connections under the hood, exposed to the elements a little bit more. So you can always do that if you want, but the one that comes with the kit will work fine. Just make sure to tape it up good. But if you do use a heat shrink, once you have it crimped, to seal up the ends, you come back with a heat source and shrink them down. What we're able to do now, we can remove that red cover from our positive battery post, and then this nut, we'll remove that using a 10 millimeter. And before you put the fuse in, you want to make sure that this is all connected. So I'm going to slide the ring terminal over that post there. And then we'll reinstall the nut. What I've done, I took a little more electrical tape and just wrapped it around our butt connector there. Help keep it as protected as possible. And then we can take the included fuse, push that into the holder, and close up the dust cap on it. And then what I did on our red battery cover here, I just cut out a little notch there. That way it'll clear our ring terminal. And we'll go ahead and reinstall that. Before we worry about putting everything back together in the trunk, it's a good idea to test the wiring to make sure that it's working properly. And I like to use a tester like this as opposed to hooking up to your trailer, because if your trailer has any issues, it might mislead you. I'm thinking it's something you did on the vehicle side. But with that in mind, we'll try our left turn signal, our right turn signal. We'll hit our brakes and turn on our running lights. Back in the trunk, since we verified everything works, buttoned up all of our panels. And as far as the four-way flat wiring goes, we're going to keep this stored on the inside of the vehicle, which is honestly what I recommend on something like this. But if you want to run this down outside, and mount it up next to your hitch, you can definitely do that. You can find a grommet to use, kind of like what we did with the power wire. Run this down, mount it over there if that's what you want, but in our case, use some packing tape actually, and believe it or not, it works really well for this. Tape this down just to keep it flat. Get that back in, and we're going to bundle this up and keep it stored in this little compartment here. We'll reinstall our floor covering here, if I can manage to figure out how to get it in. This just drops into place. And with all that done, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Curt custom fit vehicle wiring harness on our 2020 Subaru WRX.